On my granddaughter's 10th birthday, I was shocked to find the house empty. 2 hours later, I saw the post on Facebook. A trip to Disney with 20 relatives, except me. 1 hour later, the notification came. $30,000 charged to my card. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. I had been planning this day for weeks. My granddaughter Amelia's 10th birthday was supposed to be special, and I had spent hours carefully wrapping the art set I knew she'd been wanting. The anticipation had kept me awake the night before, imagining her face lighting up when she opened it. At 66 years old, I've learned to treasure these moments with my family. After my husband passed 3 years ago, these gatherings became even more precious to me. I arrived at my daughter Gianna's house at exactly 2 o'clock, just as we had planned. I even brought homemade cupcakes, the ones with rainbow sprinkles that Amelia always requested. But when I rang the doorbell, silence greeted me. I tried again, pressing my ear against the door. Nothing. No sounds of a party, no children laughing, no music. My heart started beating faster as I walked around to the back gate, thinking maybe they were in the yard. The gate was locked, and peering through the slats, I could see the backyard was empty too. No decorations, no tables set up, nothing. I pulled out my phone and called Gianna. Straight to voicemail. Then I tried my son-in-law Marcus. Same thing. A cold dread began settling in my stomach as I stood there on their front porch, holding a birthday present for a party that apparently wasn't happening. Maybe I got the date wrong. I fumbled through my purse for my planner, but there it was in my own handwriting. Amelia's birthday party Saturday, 2 p.m. I had even marked it with a little star. That's when I decided to check Facebook, something I rarely did but kept mainly to see photos of Amelia. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was Gianna's latest post, uploaded just 30 minutes ago. A selfie of her and Marcus at the airport, both wearing Mickey Mouse ears and enormous smiles. The caption read, "Family Disney trip. 22 of us ready for the most magical vacation ever." 22 people. I scrolled through the comments and saw my sister Linda's response. "Have the best time. Amelia looks so excited at breakfast." My nephew Tommy had posted a group photo of everyone at the gate, waiting to board. I could see Amelia in her new Disney princess dress, surrounded by cousins, aunts, uncles, family, friends. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. I sat down hard on their porch steps, still staring at the photos. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. In one picture I could clearly see my own brother Robert, his wife, their 3 kids. There was my cousin Janet with her husband. Even the Hendersons from next door, who weren't even family, were included in this magical trip. But not me. Amelia's grandmother, who had been looking forward to her birthday for weeks, wasn't even told they were leaving. As I scrolled through more photos trying to understand how this could have happened, my phone buzzed with a notification from my bank app. A charge alert. My stomach dropped as I opened it. $30,000 had been charged to my credit card. The merchant was listed as Disney Resort Packages. I stared at the screen, reading the amount over and over. $30,000. My mind raced as I calculated what that could possibly cover. Hotel rooms for 22 people for a week, park tickets, meals, souvenirs. They had planned an elaborate family vacation and charged it all to my card. Without telling me. Without inviting me. I had given Gianna access to one of my credit cards years ago for emergencies. When Marcus lost his job 2 years back, I told her to use it for groceries and utilities until he found work again. She had never removed her name from the account, and I had forgotten all about it after he got back on his feet. My chest felt tight as the full picture became clear. They had deliberately planned this trip around Amelia's birthday, invited every single family member and friend they could think of, and funded the entire thing with my money. And they had made sure I wouldn't be there to see it happen or ask any uncomfortable questions about the expenses. The birthday present slipped from my lap and tumbled onto the porch. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears as I sat there, trying to process what had just happened to me. I thought about all the times I had helped them over the years. The down payment I had given them for this very house. The countless times I had watched Amelia when they wanted to go out. The school clothes I bought, the vacation money I had contributed, the emergencies I had covered without ever asking for anything back. And this was how they repaid me. By treating me like an ATM while excluding me from my own granddaughter's milestone birthday. The worst part wasn't even the money, though $30,000 was a significant amount for someone living on a fixed income. The worst part was the planning that had gone into this betrayal. They had to coordinate schedules with 22 people, book flights, arrange hotels, organize transportation. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This was calculated. I picked up the birthday present and walked slowly back to my car. As I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about Amelia's face in those photos. She looked so happy, so excited. She probably didn't even know I was supposed to be there. They had likely told her something about Grandma being busy or sick. But I wasn't sick. I was just unwanted. When I got home to my small apartment, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at my phone again. The Facebook photos had more comments now. People saying how wonderful it looked, how lucky everyone was to be there. My own family members, people I had helped countless times over the years, all celebrating without me. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I waited until Monday evening to call Gianna. I needed time to calm down and think clearly about what I was going to say. I had spent the entire weekend going over bank statements and trying to understand the full scope of what had happened. When she finally answered, I could hear the sounds of the Disney resort in the background. Children laughing, music playing, the general chaos of a theme park. "Oh, hi, Mom," Gianna said, her voice artificially bright. "How are you doing?" "I'm calling about Amelia's birthday party," I said, keeping my voice as steady as possible. "The one I was apparently not invited to." There was a pause. Then she sighed, and I could practically hear her rolling her eyes. "Mom, we decided it would be better to do something small this year. You know how you get at these family gatherings." "How I get?" I repeated, feeling heat rise in my chest. "What exactly does that mean? You always find something to complain about. The food's too spicy, it's too loud, the kids are running around too much. We just wanted Amelia to have a fun, stress-free birthday for once." I was so shocked by her casual cruelty that I couldn't speak for a moment. "Gianna, this is a Disney trip with 22 people. How is that small and stress-free?" "Because you're not here to ruin it," she said bluntly. "Everyone's actually relaxing and having fun instead of walking on eggshells wondering what you'll criticize next." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had to sit down. "Is that really what you think of me? That I ruin your family gatherings?" "Mom, come on. Remember Amelia's 7th birthday when you complained the whole time about the noise level? Or last Christmas when you lectured Uncle Robert about letting his kids have too much sugar? You make everyone uncomfortable." I tried to remember those incidents the way she was describing them. Yes, I had mentioned that the music was very loud at Amelia's 7th birthday, but only because I was sitting right next to the speaker and couldn't hear what people were saying to me. And I had suggested to Robert that maybe the kids should eat some real food before having thirds on dessert. But that was because his youngest was literally bouncing off the walls and had already spilled juice on 2 people. So instead of talking to me about these concerns, you decided to plan a $30,000 vacation and charge it to my credit card without telling me? Another pause. Longer this time. "You noticed that, huh?" "Of course I noticed it, Gianna. It's my money." "Mom, you have plenty of money. Dad's life insurance, your pension, the house you sold. What are you saving it all for anyway? You're 66 years old." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So that gives you the right to steal from me?" Steal is a strong word. I prefer to think of it as you finally contributing something meaningful to this family, instead of just criticizing from the sidelines. My mouth went dry. "Contributing something meaningful? Gianna, I gave you the down payment for your house. I've bought Amelia's school clothes for the past 3 years. I paid your electric bill 6 times when Marcus was between jobs. I've given you thousands of dollars over the years. And we've appreciated it. But this family needed something special, something to bring us all together. Uncle Robert's been struggling since his divorce. Cousin Janet just lost her job. The Henderson kids have never been to Disney. This trip was about more than just Amelia's birthday. It was about family. Then why wasn't I included in this family trip?" Gianna's voice turned cold. "Because you would have found a way to ruin it. You would have complained about the crowds, the heat, the expense. You would have made everyone miserable with your constant negativity." I felt tears starting to form, but I forced myself to stay focused. Did everyone agree to exclude me? Uncle Robert, Cousin Janet, all of them. We took a vote, she said matter-of-factly. It was unanimous. Everyone wanted to enjoy this vacation without having to worry about managing your mood. A vote. My own family had taken a vote about whether to include me, and I had lost unanimously. The humiliation was so complete I felt physically sick. And the money? Did everyone also vote that I should pay for this vacation? I wasn't invited to. Mom, you're being dramatic. You can afford it, and frankly, it's about time you started pulling your weight financially instead of just throwing money at us whenever you feel guilty about something. Pulling my weight? I could barely get the words out. Gianna, I've been supporting this family financially for years. Supporting us? She actually laughed. Mom, you give us money when it's convenient for you, when it makes you feel important. But you've never really been there for us emotionally. Money doesn't make up for being a cold, critical mother. The accusation hung in the air between us. I thought about all the times I had rearranged my life to help them. All the nights I had babysat Amelia so they could go out. All the school events I had attended, the soccer games I had cheered at, the bedtime stories I had read. I don't understand, I said quietly. I thought we had a good relationship. I thought you appreciated my help. We appreciate your money, Gianna said bluntly. But honestly, Mom, when was the last time you had a conversation with any of us that didn't involve you pointing out something we were doing wrong? I tried to think. Had I really been that critical? I remembered giving advice about Amelia's bedtime routine, suggesting they limit her screen time, mentioning that maybe they should save more money instead of eating out so much. But I thought that was just normal family conversation, the kind of guidance you offer when you care about people. The bottom line is, Gianna continued, you needed to learn that you can't buy your way into this family's good graces and then act superior to everyone. We're all adults, and we don't need your constant judgment. So you decided to teach me a lesson by stealing $30,000 from me? I decided to show you what it feels like when the family moves on without you. And honestly, it's been amazing. Everyone's been commenting on how much more relaxed and fun these few days have been. Even Amelia said she wishes every family gathering could be this peaceful. That last comment broke something inside me. My granddaughter, the light of my life, was apparently happier without me there. When are you coming back? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Thursday. And Mom, when we get back, I think we need to have a serious conversation about boundaries. You need to understand that your role in this family is changing. We don't need you to parent us anymore. We need you to respect our decisions and support us without all the criticism. And if I don't agree to these new boundaries, then I guess you'll find out what it's really like to be excluded from this family. Because this Disney trip? This was just a preview. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, staring at it as if it might somehow take back the conversation that had just happened. My daughter had just told me that my entire family preferred my money to my presence, that they had voted to exclude me from my granddaughter's birthday celebration, that they viewed me as a source of funding and constant criticism rather than as someone they loved. And they had stolen $30,000 from me to prove their point. But as I sat there in my quiet apartment, something unexpected began to happen. The hurt and shock started transforming into something else entirely. Something harder and clearer than anything I had felt in years. If they wanted to treat me like a bank instead of family, then maybe it was time I started acting like one. And banks, I realized, have the power to close accounts. Tuesday morning found me at my kitchen table with 7 years' worth of bank statements spread out like pieces of a puzzle I was finally ready to solve. I had barely slept, but my mind was clearer than it had been in months. If my family saw me as nothing more than a source of money, then I needed to understand exactly how much money we were talking about. What I discovered made my stomach turn. The pattern was so obvious once I laid it all out chronologically. Every few months, there would be a charge on the credit card I had given Gianna for emergencies. But these weren't emergencies. In March of last year, $1,500 at a furniture store. In June, $800 at a high-end restaurant for what I now realized must have been Marcus's birthday dinner for 12 people. In September, $2,000 for what the statement listed as family vacation expenses. I had never questioned these charges because Gianna always had an explanation. The furniture was to replace their couch after Amelia spilled something on it. The restaurant charge was for a work dinner Marcus had to host for his boss. The vacation money was their contribution to a family reunion I hadn't been invited to, though I didn't realize that at the time. But now, looking at all of it together, I could see the truth. They had been systematically using my credit card to fund their lifestyle for years, always with a story designed to make me feel guilty for questioning it. I pulled out my calculator and started adding up the totals. In the past 3 years alone, they had charged over $60,000 to my account. And that didn't include the cash I had given them directly, the checks I had written for Amelia's school expenses, the times I had paid for groceries when they claimed to be short on money. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone to call my bank. I needed to understand exactly what my legal options were, but first I needed to get that credit card canceled before they could do any more damage from Disney World. Mrs. Patterson, I see the card in question was used for a large charge over the weekend, the customer service representative said after I explained the situation. $30,000 is quite significant. Do you want to dispute this charge? I'm not sure yet, I said honestly. The person who used it does have authorized access to the account, but they used it without my knowledge or permission. I can cancel the card immediately and issue you a new one, she offered. That would prevent any additional unauthorized charges. Yes, please do that right away. As I hung up the phone, I felt a small sense of relief. At least they couldn't charge anything else to my account while they were still at Disney. But the relief was quickly replaced by a deeper anger as I continued going through the statements. It wasn't just Gianna and Marcus. I found charges that I now realized were from other family members too. A charge at a sporting goods store that must have been for my nephew Tommy's baseball equipment. Several charges at children's clothing stores that were too expensive to be for just Amelia. My family had apparently been passing my credit card information around like a community resource. And the timing of these charges was what really got to me. They always seemed to happen right after family gatherings where I had been particularly generous with gifts or offers to help. It was as if they had learned to see my kindness as weakness, my love as something they could exploit. I thought about Gianna's words from our phone call. She had accused me of being cold and critical, of always finding something to complain about. But as I sat there looking at evidence of years of financial manipulation, I wondered if what she called criticism was actually just me noticing that things didn't add up. Like when I had questioned why they needed a $300 stroller when they already had a perfectly good one. Or when I had mentioned that eating out 4 times a week seemed expensive when they kept saying money was tight. Or when I had suggested that maybe Amelia didn't need quite so many toys when her room was already overflowing. Had they labeled me as negative and critical because I was the only one paying attention to their spending patterns? Because I was the only one who seemed to notice that their lifestyle didn't match their claimed income? I picked up my phone again and called my sister Linda. She had been on that Disney trip, smiling in the photos while my money paid for her vacation. I needed to understand how deep this went. Marilyn. Linda's voice was warm and cheerful when she answered. How are you, honey? I was just thinking about you. I'm sure you were, I said dryly. How's Disney World? There was a pause. Oh, you heard about the trip. Gianna said she was going to talk to you about it. She did talk to me about it. After I found out about it on Facebook, and after $30,000 was charged to my credit card without my knowledge. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Linda cleared her throat. Marilyn, I think there might be some confusion here. The only confusion is how my own sister could participate in excluding me from my granddaughter's birthday, and then let me pay for the privilege. It wasn't like that, Linda said, but her voice lacked conviction. Gianna said you were busy this weekend. She said you had other plans. What other plans could I possibly have that would be more important than Amelia's 10th birthday? Another long pause. I don't know, Marilyn. I just know that Gianna said it would be better if we kept the group smaller this year. 22 people is smaller? Look, I don't want to get in the middle of whatever's going on between you and Gianna, but I will say that these family gatherings have been more relaxed lately when you haven't been there. The words stung, but they also clarified something for me. This wasn't just about Gianna's resentment. My entire family had apparently decided that I was a burden they preferred to avoid. More relaxed, I repeated. And yet somehow I'm still expected to pay for these relaxing gatherings that I'm not welcome at. Marilyn, you know we all appreciate everything you do for the family financially. You've been incredibly generous over the years. but not generous enough to deserve a seat at the table. Linda sighed. Maybe when we get back, we can all sit down and talk about this like adults. Maybe we can, I agreed. But first, I think you all need to understand what it means when the bank stops paying for your fun. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were steadier now, my mind clearer. I wasn't the victim of a spontaneous family decision. This was a pattern that had been building for years, and I had been too trusting to see it. I spent the rest of the day going through more financial records. The picture that emerged was of a family that had learned to see me as their personal financial safety net. Every crisis, every want, every whim had somehow become my responsibility to fund. And in return, I had been gradually pushed to the margins of their lives. But there was something else I discovered as I dug deeper into the records. Something that changed everything. 3 months ago, Marcus had gotten a promotion at work. A significant one, based on a conversation I remembered having with Gianna where she had mentioned he was making almost double his previous salary. Yet the charges to my credit card had actually increased during this period, not decreased. They weren't struggling financially. They were simply taking advantage of my willingness to help. They had trained me to be their personal ATM, and I had been so focused on being a good mother and grandmother that I had never questioned the arrangement. Until now. I picked up my phone and started making a list of calls I needed to make. My lawyer to understand my options for recovering the money they had taken. My financial advisor to discuss protecting my assets going forward. And my locksmith because I suddenly remembered that Gianna still had a key to my apartment. If my family wanted to treat me like a stranger, then they were going to discover what it actually meant to be cut off from my life. Not just my money but everything. As I sat there making my plans, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. A sense of purpose that had nothing to do with making other people happy. For the first time in decades, I was going to put my own needs first. And I was going to enjoy watching them learn what they had really lost. Wednesday morning, I was sitting in my lawyer's office with a folder full of bank statements and a newfound clarity about what I needed to do. Robert Chen had been handling my legal affairs since my husband died. And he was one of the few people who knew the full extent of my financial situation. Mrs. Patterson, he said after reviewing the documents I had brought, this is quite troubling. The pattern of charges suggests they've been treating your credit account as their personal expense fund for years. What are my options? I asked. Can I get the money back? Robert adjusted his glasses and flipped through several pages. The recent $30,000 charge is definitely recoverable, since it was made without your explicit consent for that specific purpose. The older charges are more complicated because you did give your daughter authorized user status, but we could argue that the access was granted for specific purposes that were misrepresented. I want all of it back, I said firmly. Every unauthorized dollar. That's going to require documentation, and possibly some uncomfortable conversations with your family members. Are you prepared for that level of conflict? I thought about Gianna's voice on the phone, telling me I was unwanted at family gatherings. I thought about Linda's casual admission that everyone preferred these events without me. I thought about my granddaughter enjoying a birthday celebration funded by my money, while I sat alone in my apartment. I'm prepared, I said. Robert nodded and made some notes. I'll start the paperwork today. We'll begin with the Disney charge since that's the most recent and clear-cut case. As for the rest, I'll need you to go through these statements and identify which charges were genuinely authorized emergencies versus which ones were misrepresented to you. After leaving the lawyer's office, I drove to my bank to handle the next phase of my plan. I had been thinking about this all night, and I knew exactly what needed to happen. I want to close all joint accounts and remove all authorized users from my credit cards, I told the manager. I also want to set up new accounts that require dual authentication for any charges over $100. The process took almost 2 hours, but when I left the bank, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time since my husband died, my money was completely under my own control. That afternoon, I made another call that had been weighing on my mind. Amelia's school. Mrs. Patterson, how nice to hear from you, the secretary said when I identified myself. Are you calling about the spring fundraiser? Amelia mentioned that you usually help with those. Actually, I'm calling to let you know that I'll no longer be handling any financial responsibilities for Amelia's school expenses. Any bills, fundraisers, or special programs should be directed to her parents from now on. There was a pause. Oh, I see. Should I remove you from our emergency contact list as well? I hadn't thought about that, but it made sense. If I wasn't trusted to be part of family decisions, I shouldn't be responsible for emergency situations either. Yes, please remove me from all lists except as a grandparent for special events that she might want me to attend. Of course, Mrs. Patterson. I'll update our records right away. As I hung up, I realized how many different ways I had been financially responsible for my family without them even acknowledging it. School expenses, emergency contacts, insurance beneficiaries. I had woven myself into their safety net so completely that they had stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource. Thursday morning, I was ready for their return. I had spent the week systematically removing myself from every financial obligation and emergency backup plan they had come to rely on. But I hadn't told them about any of it. I wanted them to discover the changes organically, the way I had discovered their betrayal. The first call came at 11:30 in the morning. Mom, there's something wrong with the credit card, Gianna said without preamble. I'm trying to pay for our luggage fees and it's being declined. That's because I canceled it, I said calmly. You what? Why would you do that? Because $30,000 in unauthorized charges seemed like a good reason to review my account security. Mom, we're at the airport. We need to pay these fees to get home. Then I suggest you use your own credit card. There was a pause and I could hear Marcus saying something in the background. Mom, this is ridiculous. We can talk about the Disney charges when we get home. But right now we're stuck at the airport with 4 families and a bunch of kids. I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're all adults, as you've been so eager to remind me. Fine, Gianna snapped. But this conversation isn't over. No, it's not, I agreed. But it's going to be very different from what you're expecting. The second call came an hour later from my nephew Tommy. Aunt Marilyn, my mom said you canceled some credit card that we've been using for family stuff. Is that true? It's true, Tommy. Why? Well, we're kind of stuck here. Uncle Marcus's card got declined too. And we don't have enough cash to cover everyone's luggage fees and transportation home. Interesting. So it wasn't just my money they had been relying on. Marcus's financial situation was apparently more precarious than they had been letting on. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. But I'm sure you'll work something out. Aunt Marilyn, there are kids here. My little sister is tired and hungry, and we just want to get home. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I pushed it aside. These same kids had been enjoying a vacation paid for with my money, while I was deliberately excluded from the celebration it was supposedly honoring. Tommy, your parents are adults who chose to take an expensive vacation without ensuring they had the means to get home. That's not my responsibility to fix. But you always help us when we're in trouble. Yes, I have. And look how that's worked out for me. The third call came from Linda, and her tone was considerably less friendly than it had been on Monday. Marilyn, what exactly do you think you're doing? You've left your entire family stranded at an airport because you're having some kind of tantrum. I'm not having a tantrum, Linda. I'm experiencing a moment of clarity about how this family actually operates. We're family, Marilyn. We help each other. Do we? Because it seems to me that I help all of you, and you help yourselves to my money while excluding me from your lives. That's not fair. What's not fair is taking a vote to exclude me from my granddaughter's birthday party, and then charging the celebration to my credit card. What's not fair is telling me I'm too negative for family gatherings while simultaneously expecting me to fund them. We didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it, Linda? She was quiet for a long moment. Maybe we could have handled this better. But you have to understand that you can be difficult sometimes. You have opinions about everything, and it makes people feel judged. So instead of having an honest conversation with me about your concerns, you decided to cut me out and cash in. It wasn't supposed to be permanent. We thought maybe if you saw how well things went without the tension, you might understand what we meant. Oh, I understand perfectly. You wanted to test what life would be like without me, and you wanted me to pay for the experiment. Marilyn, please. Can't we just talk about this when we get home? We're all tired and stressed right now. I'm sure you are. Being financially irresponsible is very stressful. I hung up and turned off my phone. I had heard enough. They were beginning to understand that their actions had consequences, but they still thought this was about hurt feelings that could be smoothed over with explanations and apologies. They had no idea what was coming next. That evening, I drove to Gianna's house and let myself in with the key I had never returned. I wasn't there to take anything or do anything destructive. I just wanted to see their life without the rose-colored glasses of a devoted mother and grandmother. What I found was exactly what I had expected. Their house was filled with expensive furniture, high-end electronics, designer clothes hanging in closets. Amelia's room looked like a toy store had exploded in it. Their refrigerator was covered with takeout menus from restaurants that charged $30 for a meal. This was not the home of a struggling family that needed my financial support. This was the home of people who had learned to live beyond their means because they knew someone else would always cover the difference. I left the key on their kitchen counter with a note. Since I'm no longer welcome at family gatherings, I thought I should return this. You'll find that several other arrangements have also changed. We'll talk when you're ready, to be honest. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. The satisfaction of taking control of my own life. Tomorrow they would start discovering just how much they had taken for granted. And I would start discovering what it felt like to be valued instead of used. Friday morning brought the storm I had been expecting. My phone started ringing at 7 in the morning and didn't stop. I let every call go to voicemail, sipping my coffee and reading the newspaper like it was any other peaceful morning. By noon, I had 23 missed calls and 17 voicemails. I decided it was time to see just how desperate they had become. The first voicemail was from Marcus, and his voice was strained in a way I had never heard before. Marilyn, we need to talk. When we got home yesterday, we found your note and your key. I understand you're upset about the Disney trip, but we can work this out. Please call me back. The second was from Gianna, and she sounded frantic. Mom, I don't understand what's happening. The mortgage payment got rejected this morning. The automatic transfer didn't go through. I thought maybe there was a bank error, but then I called and they said the account was closed. Mom, our house payment is due today. Please call me back immediately. I smiled as I sipped my coffee. I had forgotten that I had set up automatic transfers to help with their mortgage 3 years ago when Marcus was between jobs. The payments had just become routine, something I never thought about. Apparently neither had they. The third voicemail was from my nephew Tommy, and he sounded like he was crying. Aunt Marilyn, please, I don't know what's going on with the family, but my mom said you're not helping us anymore. I was supposed to start college next month, and she said the money you promised for my tuition isn't coming. I already turned down my student loan offers because you said you'd help. Please, I can't lose my spot in school. That one made me pause. I had promised to help Tommy with college, but that was back when I thought I was part of a family that valued me. Now I was learning that even my educational gifts to the younger generation had been taken for granted rather than appreciated. The fourth voicemail was from Linda, and her tone had shifted from frustrated to genuinely worried. Marilyn, I talked to Robert Chin's office today. They said you're taking legal action to recover money from the family. Is that really necessary? Can't we sit down and work this out without involving lawyers? This is getting out of hand. But it was the fifth voicemail that really caught my attention. It was from Amelia, and her small 10-year-old voice broke my heart even as it strengthened my resolve. Grandma Marilyn, my mom said you're mad at us and that's why you didn't come to my birthday party. I saved you a piece of cake from Disney World, but it got smushed in my suitcase. Mom and Dad are fighting a lot about money, and Dad said some bad words about grown-up stuff I don't understand. Are you still going to come to my piano recital next week? I've been practicing the song you taught me. I had to turn off the phone after that one. Hearing Amelia's innocent voice reminded me that there was one person in this family who was truly blameless in all of this. But I also knew that protecting her from the consequences of her parents' behavior wasn't going to help anyone in the long run. That afternoon my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Gianna standing on my doorstep, holding Amelia's hand. My granddaughter was wearing her favorite purple dress and clutching a small wrapped present. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Mom, we need to talk, Gianna said. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she hadn't slept. I'm sure we do, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Grandma Marilyn. Amelia broke free from her mother's hand and ran to hug my legs. I brought you a present from Disney World. It's a snow globe with Cinderella's castle in it. I knelt down to accept the gift, my heart aching as I looked at her bright, hopeful face. Thank you, sweetheart. That was very thoughtful of you. Are you mad at us? She asked, her big brown eyes searching my face. Mom said you're upset about grown-up stuff. I'm not mad at you, Amelia. I could never be mad at you. Gianna cleared her throat. Amelia, why don't you go play in the garden for a few minutes while Grandma and I talk? I watched my granddaughter skip toward the small flower bed beside my front steps before turning back to face my daughter. The desperation in her eyes was unmistakable. Mom, I know you're angry and maybe you have a right to be. But you're destroying our lives over what amounts to a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I kept my voice low so Amelia wouldn't overhear. You deliberately excluded me from my granddaughter's birthday, charged $30,000 to my credit card without permission, and told me that the entire family voted to keep me away because I ruin your gatherings. Which part of that did I misunderstand? Okay, we handled it badly. I admit that. But Mom, you have to understand the pressure we've been under. Marcus's job is more unstable than we let on. We're drowning in debt. And when this Disney opportunity came up, it felt like the only chance we'd have to give Amelia something special. So you stole from me to pay for it. We borrowed from you. We were going to pay it back. When? With what money? And why wasn't I told about this borrowing arrangement? Gianna's composure began to crack. Because we knew you'd say no. You'd lecture us about financial responsibility and make us feel guilty for wanting to give our daughter a magical experience. So instead, you made me feel like a fool for believing I was part of this family. You are part of this family. Gianna's voice rose, then dropped again as she glanced at Amelia. But Mom, you have to admit that you can be judgmental. You have opinions about everything we do, and sometimes it feels like we can never live up to your standards. I studied my daughter's face, seeing her father in the set of her jaw, the way she tilted her head when she was trying to manipulate a situation. Tell me something, Gianna. If I had been invited to Disney World, would you have told me I was paying for it? She hesitated just long enough to give me my answer. I thought so, I said. This wasn't about giving Amelia a special experience. This was about having a special experience without me, and making me pay for the privilege of being excluded. That's not true. Then explain to me why 22 people managed to keep this trip secret from me for weeks. Explain to me why not one person in my family thought I deserved to know that my granddaughter's birthday celebration was being moved to Disney World. Gianna's shoulders sagged. We thought it would be easier if you just didn't know. Easier for whom? For everyone. You would have wanted to come, and then you would have spent the whole trip complaining about the heat and the crowds and how much everything cost. So you made the decision for me. You decided I wouldn't enjoy it, so I shouldn't be invited. Yes, she said quietly. We did. At least she was finally being honest. And now you want me to pretend that never happened and go back to funding your lifestyle. We want our family back, she said, tears starting to flow. Mom, I know we messed up, but we can fix this. We can set up a payment plan for the Disney money. We can include you in future plans. We can make this right. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you only want to make this right because you've discovered what it costs to exclude me. Before Gianna could answer, my phone rang. I could see it was my lawyer calling. I need to take this, I told her. Robert, what did you find out? Mrs. Patterson, I have some interesting news about the Disney charges. When I contacted the resort to get detailed billing information, I discovered that the $30,000 covered significantly more than what your family told you. They booked premium suites, character dining experiences, and private tours. This wasn't a modest family vacation. This was a luxury experience that most families save for years to afford. I looked at Gianna, who was clearly trying to hear what my lawyer was saying. What else did you discover? I also found records showing that your daughter's husband has been using multiple credit cards to fund their lifestyle for months. They're in much deeper financial trouble than they've admitted to you. The Disney trip appears to have been financed as a last hurrah before facing some serious financial consequences. What kind of consequences? Foreclosure proceedings will likely begin within the next 60 days if they can't catch up on their mortgage payments. Credit card companies are threatening collection actions. Mrs. Patterson, your family isn't just asking you to pay for their vacation. They're asking you to save them from bankruptcy. I thanked Robert and hung up, my mind reeling. The scope of their deception was even larger than I had imagined. Who was that? Gianna asked, but her voice told me she already knew. My lawyer. He's been very thorough in investigating exactly what my money paid for in Disney World. I fixed her with a steady gaze. Premium suites, Gianna? Private character dining? Personal tour guides? Her face went pale. Mom, I can explain. I'm sure you can. Just like you can explain why you're facing foreclosure, and didn't think that was worth mentioning when you were planning luxury vacations with my money. How did you dash? She stopped herself, realizing she had just confirmed what my lawyer had told me. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm but firm. You're going to return every penny of that $30,000 within 90 days, or I'm going to pursue full legal action for theft and fraud. You're going to get your financial house in order without any assistance from me. And you're going to learn to value my presence in this family, not just my bank account. Mom, we can't pay back $30,000 in 90 days. You know that's impossible. Then you should have thought about that before you spent it. Gianna's desperation was now complete. What about Amelia? Are you going to punish her for our mistakes? I looked at my granddaughter, who was carefully arranging small flowers in a tiny bouquet. Amelia will always have a relationship with me, but it will be on terms that teach her healthy boundaries and respect, not the dysfunction that you've created in this family. So what does that mean exactly? It means that if you want me in your lives, you're going to prove that you value me for more than my money. And until you do that, you're going to discover what it really means to stand on your own. As I watched Gianna's face crumble with the realization that her safety net was gone, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction exactly, but a deep sense of rightness. For the first time in years, I was being honest about what I needed from this relationship. And for the first time in years, they were going to have to decide if they loved me enough to give it to me. 3 months later, I was sitting in my favorite chair reading when I heard the familiar sound of Amelia's laughter in my garden. But this time, it wasn't accompanied by the tension that had defined our family gatherings for so many years. The transformation hadn't been easy or immediate. For the first 6 weeks after our confrontation, I heard nothing from my family except through my lawyer. Robert had been relentless in pursuing the return of my money, and by the end of August, Gianna and Marcus had managed to repay $18,000 of what they owed me. The remaining $12,000 was being paid back in monthly installments that they actually met on time. But more importantly, something fundamental had shifted in how they approached our relationship. The change started with a letter that arrived in early September. Not from Gianna, but from Amelia, written in her careful 10-year-old handwriting. Dear Grandma Marilyn, Mom helped me write this letter, but these are my words. I don't understand all the grown-up problems, but I know you felt sad that we went to Disney without you. I'm sorry we hurt your feelings. I saved some Mickey Mouse ears for you and I want to give them to you if you want to see me again. I miss our Saturday baking days. Love, Amelia. That letter broke something open in my chest that I had been holding closed for months. But I didn't respond immediately. I needed to be sure that this wasn't just another attempt at manipulation using my granddaughter's innocent love. 2 weeks later, Gianna called. Not to ask for money or make excuses, but to say something I had never heard from her before. Mom, I've been going to counseling. Individual therapy, not couples counseling. I needed to understand why I thought it was okay to treat you the way I did. I had been so prepared for another round of justifications that her honesty caught me off guard. What did you learn? I learned that I've been treating you like a parent bank instead of a person for years. I learned that I inherited Dad's sense of entitlement without ever questioning whether it was fair to you. And I learned that the way I talked to you in that phone call from Disney was cruel in a way that I can't excuse. Her voice was steady, not the desperate pleading I had heard during our confrontation. This sounded like genuine self-reflection. I also learned that you were right about our financial irresponsibility. We were living beyond our means and using your generosity as a way to avoid facing reality. Marcus and I are working with a financial counselor now. And we're learning to live within an actual budget for the first time in our marriage. I waited for the request that usually followed these kinds of admissions, but it didn't come. I'm not calling to ask for anything, Mom. I'm calling to ask if there's a way for us to rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. Terms that respect your autonomy and value your presence, not just your financial support. What would that look like? I asked carefully. I don't know yet. I was hoping we could figure it out together. It took 2 more weeks of careful conversations before I agreed to see them again. But when I did, the difference was immediately apparent. Gianna arrived at my apartment with a folder full of financial statements and a detailed budget that she and Marcus had been following for 6 weeks. She walked me through their spending, their debt repayment plan, and their timeline for becoming financially independent. She didn't ask for my approval or my money. She was simply showing me that they were taking responsibility for their own lives. We want you to know that we understand why you cut us off, she said. And we want you to know that we're working to become the kind of family that deserves your love, not the kind that takes advantage of it. Marcus, who had always been quiet during family conflicts, spoke up for the first time. Marilyn, I owe you an apology that's long overdue. I allowed Gianna to use your generosity to cover up my own financial failures. I should have been honest about our situation, instead of letting you become our safety net. But it was Amelia who sealed the deal for me. When she saw me, she didn't run to me with demands or expectations. Instead, she walked over quietly and handed me a small potted plant. I grew this from seeds, she said. Mom said that growing things takes patience and care. And I wanted to give you something that I took care of myself instead of something that cost money. That 10-year-old's wisdom cut straight to the heart of what had been wrong with our family dynamic. Everything had been about money, about what could be bought or provided, instead of what could be built through genuine care and effort. Over the following weeks, we began to reconstruct our relationships based on mutual respect, rather than financial obligation. Gianna started asking for my advice about parenting decisions, not my money for parenting expenses. Marcus began including me in conversations about their goals and challenges instead of just their emergencies. Most importantly, they started planning family gatherings that focused on spending time together rather than spending my money. The first dinner they hosted after our reconciliation was at their house, but it was completely different from the expensive affairs they used to organize. Gianna cooked a simple meal. Marcus set up card games in the living room, and Amelia proudly served dessert that she had made herself with minimal supervision. This is what I always wanted, I told Gianna as we cleaned dishes together that evening. Not to be your bank, but to be your mother. I know that now, she said quietly. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand the difference. But the real test came when my nephew Tommy called in October. His college fund crisis had been resolved when Linda and Robert finally stepped up to take responsibility for their own son's education, but he was calling about something else. Aunt Marilyn, I wanted to thank you for not bailing us out when we were stuck at the airport that day. I'm not sure I understand, Tommy. It made us all realize how much we had been taking you for granted. My parents had to have some really hard conversations about money and responsibility. They're both working now instead of just assuming you'd cover the difference when they came up short. It was the wake-up call we all needed. Even Linda had eventually come around. She visited me in November with a genuine apology and a proposal. Marilyn, I know I can't undo the way we treated you, but I want to make sure it never happens again. I think our family needs some ground rules about financial boundaries and mutual respect. We spent that afternoon drafting what we called our family charter. It established clear boundaries about financial assistance, required transparency about money matters, and most importantly, created a system for addressing conflicts before they reached the breaking point we had experienced. But the most satisfying change was in my relationship with Amelia. Without the stress of financial manipulation and family politics, we were able to develop the kind of grandmother-granddaughter bond one had always dreamed of. Our Saturday baking sessions resumed, but now they were about teaching her life skills and spending quality time together, not about me trying to buy her affection with expensive outings. On Christmas morning, 6 months after the Disney disaster, I woke up in my own bed in my own apartment. But instead of spending the holiday alone as I had expected to, I was hosting Christmas dinner for the first time in years. Gianna and Marcus arrived early to help with cooking, bringing ingredients they had purchased themselves and recipes they wanted to share. Linda came with a homemade pie and stories about her new job. Tommy brought his girlfriend and helped set up tables. Even the Henderson family, who had been included in the Disney trip that started this whole crisis, came by to apologize and bring a thoughtful gift. But the best part was watching Amelia help coordinate everything. At 10 years old, she had somehow become our family's little ambassador of kindness, making sure everyone felt included and appreciated. "Grandma Marilyn," she said as we sat down to eat, "this is the best Christmas we've ever had." "Why is that, sweetheart?" "Because everyone's happy to be here instead of just pretending to be happy." The wisdom of children never ceases to amaze me. As I looked around the table at my family that evening, I realized that I had gotten something more valuable than my money back. I had gotten my dignity back. I had taught them to value my presence, not just my bank account. And in doing so, I had learned to value myself in a way that had taken me 66 years to discover. The woman who had sat alone in her apartment 6 months earlier, devastated by her family's betrayal, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, clearer about her worth, and surrounded by people who had learned to love her for who she was rather than what she could provide. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the opportunity to miss you enough to realize what they've lost. And sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away until they figure out how to love you properly. My family had learned that lesson the hard way. But they had learned it. And now finally we were all better for it.